Welcome to Linux Saloon, a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap. Each show will have a talk about Linux projects such as a distribution, desktop environment, application. We also chat about the news like tonight or any variety of topics from the community. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. I'm Nate, a Linux, fitness, and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the OpenSUSE project. And with me today, I got a fantastic... What is it, like a bunch of goats? Is it just a flock of goats? And it doesn't matter. I have Eric, Sean, Jinda, Colin, Fascinator, and Ulfnic. How is everybody?
Good.
Doing great. How are you, Nate?
You go with cohort, maybe?
Cohorts is good. Well, like a gaggle of geese. Maybe it's a gaggle.
I was gonna say,
Got an amazing gaggle. Yeah.
I don't know about that one.
A gaggle of cohorts. I like it. Well, be sure to do the straw poll. There's a fun little straw poll concerning everybody's favorite Linux distribution, the Ubuntu, what the next one should be named. I thought it was a lot of fun. So do check out that straw poll if you haven't done so already. Oh, and we have Joel. Hi, Joel.
Oops. How you doing?
Fantastic. Nice to have you.
I got a bit. Sorry, I just got a bit mixed up with the times. We've just changed back into daylight savings, and I was here 2 hours ago now. But anyway, I sorted it out.
Oh, well, I fat-fingered the announcement, and I said 9 p.m. initially, and I don't know what happened. I didn't even proofread it because I always do the same thing. So whatever.
Yeah.
You were early. I was late.
Yeah. That's right. That's all good.
So yeah, be sure to do that straw poll. It's a fun one. I like the variety of names on there. I don't know where those came from. If those are from Eris himself, or if he picked those out of someplace. I didn't do any research on that. So on the docket for today, we're gonna do that straw poll, do our news flight. But first, what have you been doing in Linux and tech? Vash, I tried to make this a news item, but you deleted it. So what gives, dude?
Yeah, because it's not really like news, but I am currently doing a game jam, Ludum 54. It is one of the bigger game jams throughout the year. There's like this Game Maker's Toolkit jam, and one at the beginning of the year is Global Game Jam. So I've been doing that this weekend. I've been diving into a lot of game development with Unity for a little bit, and then Unity, well, they lost their minds. And so it's back in Godot, looking at that, and ended up actually starting a new channel focused more on the game development side of things. And so that'll be most of my content creation at this point as well. But yes, lots of stuff going on, a couple of different projects in mind, and just thinking about different ways to go about it and figuring out the best ways to do that in Linux.
Fantastic. So you've shared with me a bunch of really cool pictures of things you've been doing and little animations and whatnot. Hi, Ben. We're talking to Vash about his, he's doing some game development, and just quickly wanted to fill you in there as I'm talking. So some really cool things that you're doing, and he had an idea. I didn't even know if you want to share it with the community necessarily, but I just want to say that. Oh, you did?
So on the Vashinator channel.
Okay.
So I've one kind of project that I'm thinking about potentially once I get a bit better at this is like another Tux type game. But I was really thinking, like, is that something that people even play? Because I don't often hear people about playing the Tux games, and I know, like, I think Super Tux Kart is kind of the highest profile one, I guess. But once
Super
I get a bit
Tux is
better
fun.
at this,
My kids have played the absolute living dookie out of the that Super Tux, like Super Tux 2, actually I think is what it's called now, and also the Extreme Tux Racer. They still play that a lot. And I mean, when they have options, like that are out there, they still like to play that on the computer. So I mean, I think they're pretty great.
Well, that's good to know. I just don't often hear people talk about them. So, but yeah, that's something I'm thinking about down the line, is another Tux game, maybe a 3D platformer, or maybe I don't know, maybe a different direction. I'm not sure.
So I like
a couple of
the idea that I really like that you kind of floated past me, that really excited me, and I realized that it'd probably be the most complex. But a Legend of Zelda style of game, like to me, in my mind, I'm thinking either like the 16-bit era or the 8-bit era, because those are the most fun, I think. Or not, or it can be more better than that. But anyway, just that the idea of having like a tux adventure like that, you know, to me, I would love to do some writing for that. But anyway, that's just me.
Yeah, yeah. Like I mentioned, I think the upgrades will be the really key to making that one work. But yeah, that's a fun idea too, and it would be something very different compared to the other text games that are out there. But
you could probably crowdsource that too.
That's the tricky thing, and I've been thinking about that actually a little bit because I think for some elements, sure you could, some of the programming, yeah. But when it comes to like core design, that would be a lot more difficult to have a cohesive game like that. Like you can build like you can build kind of a voxel type game that way. Like I think, what is it? There's a game that starts with a V and it's open source and it's kind of voxely. I cannot think of the name right now, but there are a few games out there that are more open source, but I just don't know how you'd actually make a cohesive game with. There we go. Sorry, I had a feedback on my end. But I don't know how you could actually make a cohesive game when you need that much planning for a game like that without limiting some of those roles. But I'd have to really think about that.
Well, that's pretty great. What do you think? What do you feel like is going to be your direction you want to go with it? Like, I mean, obviously, the more the adventure style game is probably a lot more complicated for numerous reasons, but it seems like could be rewarding. But maybe I don't know if maybe that wouldn't be a good first foray into gaming. I don't know.
Oh, it won't be the first project. So I ended up taking the Ludum project that I'm working on and ended up basically the first project I'm working on is kind of a brick breaker type game. And so I've got a couple of twists in there to really make it a bit different, I think, than what I've seen before. So I'm actually doing that, kind of a prototype of that for Ludum Dare. So that's going to probably be the first thing I actually put out there. And then we'll see where I go from there. But ultimately, I do have to get a lot better at something before I attempt something like a Zelda-like game. But that or a 3D platformer, I think, are kind of at the lead of the pack right now.
Very cool. And so you're doing another activity you're going to have tonight, you said, that you're going to be a part of?
There's a game jam all weekend.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. So cool. I'm taking a little bit of a break and joining you guys for a little bit. And then I'll get back to it for a little bit before I call it a night. But I've got until Monday evening to knock this out.
Excellent. It sounds like tons of fun.
Yeah, and if people are interested in game dev, they can check out the new channel, Game Dev with Michael, and see what's what. But I am going to be posting once I get through the jam. I'll be posting a kind of a debrief about that and kind of have a better idea of what project I'm talking about.
Cool. It's fantastic. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know that I'm sure that you can poke the Linux Saloon community for great ideas and maybe get some less than great ideas out of them. I don't know. It'll be great. It'll be fun.
I can see the YouTube video title now. I created a game based on, the Telegram servers. Wishes.
That's &Michael game _dev. Is that the right one?
Yes. That's the right one. Thank you.
Well, I had a good week this week. It's very busy, so probably part of the reason why I didn't get to the things I meant to get to with you, Ulfnic. But I have a Framework 13 laptop. It's a great machine, has a 13th generation i7, but the problem I had with it was I couldn't output audio through HDMI on it. It just would not work. So I did a bug. Basically, I went on the forums on Framework, and they couldn't help me through it. So then I went onto the OpenSUSE forums. They basically was like, open up a bug report. And then I think it started that in August. And so as of this past week, everything's been worked out. Like there was stuff being worked on upstream, and so I basically tested other things, gave like hardware information, and then and that was pushed up through the OpenSUSE channels. And now HDMI audio works great. Although the HDA Intel Pro audio that it has, I don't like that as much as what I got on my HP and what I have on this machine here. Only because I don't have you can't do certain things that I'm used to doing. Like you can just like like what I could do is like, for instance, on my Steam Deck, two of us, my son and I, we can play. We can each play a game at the same time if I hook up a monitor to it, like another monitor, and so we can both play like those old Pokemon games and be able to trade and do things like that, because it can actually act as two different machines, but they're the same machine and whatnot. It's actually kind of a neat, a little bit of a weird setup, but you can actually pipe the audio to the proper monitor. So I couldn't do that with the framework as it is because of the Pro Audio that Intel has. Maybe there's a profile I can apply to it to change that feature, change it to be more like that. But anyway, so can't do that. But outside of that, it works perfectly. There's no hiccups, no pops or hisses or any weirdness with the audio. It's actually very quality audio, really, and for a laptop especially. So that's pretty cool. But it was kind of nice, kind of almost sort of gratifying that I was able to start a bug report and actually get through the whole process and have a fully working, audio system on my machine. So anyway, I just want to share that bug reports do work if you do file them.
As far as the audio routing, have you tried something like what is it, QPW graph?
Yes, it doesn't allow for, because the way I think there's a Pro Audio like thing you can do, which breaks things apart based on device, but I couldn't, I didn't actually mess around with it too much, but there is a way to do it, I suppose, but I didn't really dig into it further than, the default setup is you select the audio device. You can't actually select multiple audio devices. But yeah, the graph, I can't select the other bits and pieces because it's only one audio device from the built-in sound system. That's how it's presented. Now, if I change the profile to Pro Audio, it breaks them all up, but it says Pro Audio, Pro Audio, Pro Audio, Pro Audio, and I couldn't figure out what was what even after routing it. So maybe there's a way to customize it and name things properly and better, but I didn't get that far. I'm happy that it works, and it works cleanly, and that's what's important. That's a totally different issue.
I think your Steam Deck that Steam Deck thing is a YouTube video, by the way.
The what?
I did not know that. The Steam Deck thing about making it work is basically two machines.
Mm-hmm.
That's a YouTube video for you.
Oh, for me to do?
Yeah, I didn't know about that.
Oh, that's just me horsing around being an idiot.
What do you think about like 75% of YouTube is?
Good point. All right, let me write that down.
That could be your channel name too.
But internet idiot.
Horsing around being an idiot. Yeah.
Oh, horsing around being an
I think
idiot.
it's catchy. Yeah.
I could have like a puppet horse, and I could go by Wilbur and say it's Mr. Ed.
Yeah, and you could play into the Linux Saloon theme. Maybe it's like the horse outside the
Oh,
saloon.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's
Create
a
like
good
a
idea.
meta story. Yeah, build it out. Maybe you can make an RPG for a
That
gaming event. There you go.
That sounds like a lot of thinking on my part, which there's not a whole lot left. My bandwidth is pretty tied up now, but that's a really funny idea. And if I don't do it, you should definitely do it.
Oh no.
So it looks like the stream is back up with excellent condition. Not sure what it was that was causing me problems, but hey, we're back. I'm still gonna re-upload this one. I'll have to. All right. So if you've not yet done that straw poll, if you could hop on that would be groovy. Would certainly appreciate it if you dug into that. It's one question. It is what do you think the next name for Ubuntu, the 2404 LTS should be? And it's got to be PG. So try and keep it PG if you put a suggestion there. Do your best, Joel. I don't know. I'm just finding out that you're probably the cleanest speaking feller out here, and I just made an assumption.
I think I already suggested one. I think I did Nifty. I just looked up some random animal. So I think it was Nifty or something. Oh no, Nimble. Sorry, Nimble. Whatever the Nimble, whatever thing is on the Strawpoll. That's one that I did, and yeah, I've liked the release name since 804 or 1004. So
Well,
so
there's definitely some interesting answers, that's for sure.
so Eris is not here to do the straw poll. So Eric so graciously volunteered himself after I asked him to read it, to go over the straw poll.
All right, let's do it. So since Ubuntu 23.10 Mantic Manator is almost here, what do you suggest for the 2404 LTS name should be? The format is an adjective followed by animal. Keep in mind the following adjective and animal has already been used before, natty narwhal. The first ones are only suggestions, get creative and make one. So I will read down through the list from most to least popular. We have Nifty Numbat. And
That's a fun one.
it's hard to know if all of these are actually real animals. I'm just going to take it on faith that they are actual animals.
Well, I've looked it up. They actually are real animals.
Okay. All right.
Wow. And Slippy
some
Some of
one
them.
in there.
I don't know about Bodie McBoatface though. That's the.
Well, no, that's a pretty famous one for the. There was something in the UK
Yep.
where they had a contest for naming something, and that was what they came up with.
Yeah,
And they
this
didn't end up-
This is why you don't ask the internet what you should name anything.
So nibbling noodlefish, which that's the one I went for. I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah,
And
same.
that's an other as well. So someone wrote that in. Nerdy Newt, also another. Noble Nuthatch. Nebulous Naberlek. Okay. We have knobby needlefish. So we have a nibbling needlefish, or nibbling noodlefish, and a knobby needlefish. Get the two of those together. Novel Nigua, Nigaui, Nigua, I don't know. Nomadic Nyala, Napsy Numpsy, Nimble Nandu, and Bodie McBoatface, Tux Penguin, and Nectarous Nightingale. So 21 votes. That's a pretty good turnout for the poll, and a lot of creativity there. Nifty Numbat came out on top with 4 votes, and then Nibbling Noodlefish and Nerdy Newt had 3 apiece, and Noble Nuthatch had 2, and then the rest had 1. So now, if any of those actually show up, we know somebody's been keeping tabs on Linux Saloon.
Or somebody who actually has influence in the Ubuntu world kind of injected over here, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have to come back to this at the time that they start coming up with names, or maybe once they choose a name, and see how close our straw poll actually was.
So nibbling noodlefish was my favorite because something about a nibbling noodlefish just makes me laugh. I don't even know what a noodlefish is. I didn't look it up, but just because I had noodle and fish in there, just made me laugh.
There's a needlefish. There's one called needlefish.
Yep.
Is it noodlefish or needlefish?
Well, there's a knobby needlefish
There's both.
and a
Yeah,
nibbling
there's both.
noodlefish.
Oh, it's both. Oh, I
Yes.
haven't found a noodlefish. There is a living fossil called Nautilus. Did you know that? Nautilus.
know Are we talking about the desktop environment called GNOME? Is that the fossil you're referring to?
That's the fossil. Yeah.
So there were a couple replies. Nifty Numbat seems most in line with their branding. And then I'd probably avoid Numbats. All right, now I have to look up Numbats for the negative connotation.
I don't know that there's any negative connotation to numbats.
Numbat, also known as a Noombat or Walperti, is an insectivorous marsupial endemic to Australia. It almost exclusively eats termites. So this must be an Australian thing that there's a negative connotation to that.
Well, there's the Nabalek. The Nabalek, that's Australian as well. It's a bit like a wallaby, small kangaroo.
Yeah. Well, that's the comment. I'd probably avoid Numbats for its negative connotations. Though they are very cute creatures, I have put in my suggestion of Nectarous Nightingale. So there you go.
They were all really
Yeah.
good.
They were very creative. And I just voted on someone else's because I'm not creative enough to to come up with anything like that. But well done, everybody who voted and added their own names on there. And I am definitely curious to see what the name is now.
Well, David Martin, I have to pop this one up. Says or Saloon salmon. Why not, right?
Why not? Yeah.
Why
So
not?
Bodie McFace is they had the government, a British government agency, let the internet suggest a name for a $287 million polar research ship, which probably seemed like a good idea at the time.
Right.
And they call it the RSS Bodie McBoatface.
They actually do?
That's so good.
Well, so I'm not sure that they actually did. This is an old story, so I'd have to find it, a newer one. I mean, there's a Wikipedia entry that says that it's also Bodie McBoatface, also known as Bodie, is the British-led boat in a fleet of 3 robotic lithium battery-powered autonomous underwater vehicles. So they initially had tried to I guess, name the larger ship Bodie McBoatface, but they've reused it now for a underwater submersible, unmanned submersible.
Okay, so it's the RRS Sir David Attenborough is what the ship ended up getting called, but Bodie McBoatface, is a
and it won by like a landslide. So of course everyone in the government's like, what are we gonna do? Nah.
Right.
So
They
the young internet,
narrowed-
what a time.
narrowed
Narrowed
their
this
parameters.
Is why you don't allow write-ins. You just say, here's your 5 choices.
Right.
Well, lots of fun.
I'm sure it was a good idea
And
at the time.
Ubuntu's naming has always been quirky and odd, and I think that adds to the somewhat fun character around that. Plus, you get some interesting desktop wallpapers that come out of it.
Right.
So, good stuff.
Do you have a favorite Ubuntu name?
Natty Narwhal. I don't know. I kind of think Natty. I think it's just I know it's kind of in my head because it's a recent one, but yeah. And I'll go. So there was Warty Warthog, Hoary Hedgehog, Breezy Badger, Dapper Drake, Edgy Eft, Feisty Fawn, Gutsy Gibbon, Hardy Heron, Intrepid Ibex, Jaunty Jackalope, Karmic Koala, Lucid Lynx, Maverick Meerkat, Natty Narwhal, excuse me, Oneric Ocelot, Precise Pangolin, Quantal Quetzal, which was always one of those weird ones, Raring Ringtail, Saucy Salamander, Trusty Tar, Utopic Unicorn, Vivid Vervet, Wily Werewolf, Xenial Xeris, Yakety Yak, Zesty Zappus, Artful Aardvark, Bionic Beaver, Cosmic Cuttlefish, Disco Dingo, Aeon Ermine, Focal Fossa, Groovy Gorilla, Hirsute Hippo, Impish Injury, Jammy Jellyfish, Kinetic Kudu, Lunar Lobster, and Mantic Minotaur. That's a heck of a history.
Yeah, it is.
Quite a few.
I like the Disco Dingo. The Disco Dingo is a pretty cool name, I must say.
Disco Dingo is excellent.
Yeah, Disco Dingo, and then the Warty Warthog is all, of course. And there's another one that it's like Bionic Beaver or something like that. Did you say that?
Yes, something like that. Bionic
Breezy Badger
something.
and Bionic Beaver. Yeah, those are the two.
Bionic Beaver, yeah.
Precise Pangolin. I always thought that was fun. Saucy Salamander. There have been a lot of fun ones, but considering they've been doing it since 2004, almost 20 years.
Yeah. Don't forget the Groovy Gorilla. He had a pretty cool set of sunglasses on. The Groovy Gorilla.
Yep. Which is the one that Wimpy named? He named one of them. I can't remember which one it was.
Probably the most esoteric one, like Xenial Xeris or
No, it's like right. It was like the last one, his last time when he was release manager of Ubuntu. I'm not sure which one it
Jammy
was.
Jellyfish, maybe, or I don't
Yeah,
know.
maybe Jammy Jellyfish, maybe, I think.
Yeah,
No,
have a
I
look.
think
Was
more
it
recent than that.
first?
It was like 20 or 21, I thought. No, 20, 19 or
Okay.
20, maybe.
Well,
Oh,
19
this- I might
A1
have been
Airmine, Focal Fossa, Groovy Gorilla, Hirsute, Hirsute. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Hippo, Impish Indri, Jammy Jellyfish, Kinetic Kudu. Kinetic Kudu. I don't know why that one doesn't stick in my head. 2210.
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, bit of fun, for something like as serious as software development. It's fun to have, something silly in there.
I was
and
go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say it was also kept PG, pretty good.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was when I got into Linux, I guess 20 years ago now, and there was an application, like everything was a struggle. Now I'm thinking back, like just to play CDs was a struggle, and everything was a struggle. So there's I can't remember the name of the application, but what I used to play CDs on the computer, and then I think ripping was also an option. Not with that one, but ripping came later. There was a like troubleshooting if you're having sound, like basically like if it's not playing, these are your troubleshooting steps, and had like a really extensive list of things to check and try and change and configure, and everything from like are you running OSS or ALSA for your sound, like that's how long ago it was. And then the very last thing is, if it's playing music and it sounds terrible, check the CD if you're playing country music. And I thought it was really funny that right at the very end they put that in there, and just like a little shot over the bow of whoever might like country music. So I thought that was I just thought it was funny, and I greatly enjoy that.
Humor.
Yeah,
I like that little tongue in cheek. Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. Oh, and Max Henry says Disco Dingo for I think the one that Hopi may have named. So
Yeah, Disco Dingo was definitely
that
a good
Hopi,
one.
Wimpy.
The one that he named. Okay.
Yeah, the one he named. Yeah,
1904.
Disco Dingo. Good times. All right, well, It is that time for us to get into the news flight. So this is all very much crowdsourced. I might have been part of that crowd too, of topics, of things to talk about. So I think the first thing, Jinda, you suggested it, and also I did notice that Eris did put it in the notes, but some very exciting news about some hardware that's coming out, especially for people who love single board computers, the Raspberry Pi 5. Who here has read anything about it? Anybody? Anybody care? Well, I know that I care. Jinda cares.
Yeah, for some reason I do.
What do you mean for some reason? Who doesn't like a Raspberry Pi?
Never had one.
Really? That surprises me.
Yeah.
I figured you had one for each day of the week by now.
Got one computer for each day of the week, but no Raspberry Pis. And they're all in storage, so I can't even use them.
How do you feel without them? Are you okay? Are you feeling all right?
Look, it's hard to try different things. I've just got to use VirtualBox now. So yeah, it's, I'm getting over it.
So Leo says, I care, and I need to make a trip to pick up 1 or 5. So maybe is that one or the other? Either 1 or 5? Anyway, so it was yesterday. It was announced, 2 days ago. It was announced by the Raspberry Pi, by Ebron Upton, that they're delighted to announce the launch of the Raspberry Pi 5. It's coming at the end of October, priced at $60 for a 4 gigabyte variant and $80 for an 8 gigabyte, plus your local taxes. Virtually every aspect of the platform has been upgraded, delivering a no-compromise user experience. Raspberry Pi 5 comes with new features. It's over twice as fast as its predecessor, and is the first Raspberry Pi computer to feature silicon designed in-house here in Cambridge, UK. So that is really cool. I wonder how that's going to how compatible it'll be with Raspberry Pi 4. Maybe we'll find out. The key features include a 2.4 gigahertz quad-core 64-bit ARM Cortex A72 CPU. A lot of letters and numbers there. The video core 7 GPU supporting OpenGL ES 3.1 and Vulkan 1.2. Dual 4K 60 frames per second, I think, HDMI display outputs. I got a thought on that. Has anybody here used a Raspberry Pi both outputs out of it? I can't say I have. Most Raspberry Pis, I don't even use the video output on at all. But
Yeah, I just set up SSH. That's it.
yeah, I just thought that was interesting. So use a dual band 802.11 AC Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 5 in the low energy BLE, a high-speed micro SD card with SDR 104 mode support. Don't know what that means, but it sounds cool. 2 USB 3 ports and 2 USB 2 ports. They have the USB 3 ports have simultaneous 5 gigabits per second operation. Gigabit Ethernet with PoE support, which requires a separate hat. 2 4-lane MIPI camera display transceivers. PCIe 2, I think a 1-lane interface for fast peripherals. Raspberry Pi standard 40-pin GPIO header, real-time clock, and a power button. Did the previous ones have a real-time clock? Previous Pis?
I do not believe so.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I think the most interesting thing there is the PCI Express slot, though. I know, I want to say it was Jeff Greeley was talking about, I think he was playing around with like an external GPU
Yep.
idea and
wow.
SSDs.
Yeah.
So that's the stuff that could be really interesting to me.
Yeah, for sure. So they continue with, we're incredibly grateful for the community of makers and hackers who make Raspberry Pi what it is. You've been extraordinarily patient through the supply chain issues that have made our work so challenging over the past couple of years. I'd like to thank you. We're going to ring fence all of the Raspberry Pi 5s we sell under at least the end of the year. What does that mean? Oh, single unit sales to individuals. So get the first bite of the cherry. I'm also giving out some printouts too of Magpie and Hackerspace. So I wonder how long it's going to take for some of the other distributions to be able to adopt Raspberry Pi 5 chip architecture, because none of the Pis are compatible with each other. Can't use they all require their own, specialized to the CPU distribution, essentially.
Oh, I did not know that.
Isn't that an ARM thing?
Yes. Good, bad, or otherwise, it's an ARM thing.
Is this one ARM? This new one? Is that
yeah.
an ARM or is it not?
Yep, it is.
It's an ARM.
Yep.
Right. So, and you've got it installed through the SD slot. Is that right? I think I've heard.
That's
Is
the
that
way
how
I've
you
done it.
install it?
Yep. You basically
Right.
you DD the image onto the SD card, or you can use the
Yep.
Pi installer. That's probably the easiest way. You can pre-configure it right through the installer there with like username and Wi-Fi. Like you can do it all right away, which is nice. But yeah, that's.
I think I was reading somewhere. That this one you really do need to buy. I think a cooler or something because it might get really hot. Is that right?
They do have active coolers for them too.
Oh,
Yeah.
they do. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they came out with a new active cooler fan that looks and it has its own plug to go on the board. Before you were just plugging into the header pins.
Oh wow,
So
that's cool.
So it does have a controller for the fan, which is a big deal. I mean, this is a $60 computer. To have all this, it's amazing. It does anything.
Yeah, and I think they've reworked the case to help with heat as well. But it's interesting that they've moved. Well, they probably couldn't realistically do the $35 model anymore. But
Yeah.
40's close.
Have you guys heard of the Zimablade?
Mm-mm.
No.
I'm about to sink Raspberry Pi's battleship. Just 1 second.
Oh boy, how dare
Yeah,
you?
here we go. I'll I'll post a link in YouTube. So I'll give you a super quick rundown. It's starting from $64. It's from the makers of the Zimaboard, which I've been following for quite some time. And the Zimaboard has this special feature, which I'm going to mention in a sec. What's amazing about this thing is it's SBC size, but it has a replaceable SODIMM RAM slot, so you can upgrade the RAM. I think the maximum is 16 gigabytes DDR3L. It comes with an Intel Celeron, so if you're talking about needing a special distribution that supports ARM and so on, because it comes with an Intel Celeron, it's a lot more likely that everything's going to work. I'm not sure to what degree that statement's going to be correct, but at least it makes it a bit easier. It comes with an integrated 32 gigabyte eMMC for onboard storage, as gigabit Ethernet it has 2 display ports, 4K mini display port, and it has a 1 board-to-board EDP interface. I'm not sure how that works, but anyway, as a Type-C port, a USB 3.0 port, 2 USB 2.0 ports, 2 serial ATA 3.0 ports, and here is the big magic trick. It has a full-size PCIe slot that is 2.0, 4 lanes.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, dude. And Novatech Spirit has reviewed these the Zimaboard, which is the predecessor, which had that same slot, and he had no problem running a graphics card on it. So it's probably, I would assume it's probably going to be just as capable. So it's not like, you know, it has a PCI Express slot, quote unquote, with some strings attached. It seems to be the real deal, where you can just plug whatever you want into it, assuming you can give it appropriate power. So I'll also link the Nova Spirit Tech review too. And yeah, this thing, it's freaking amazing. It's
this is cool. Yeah, bar none. This is, and it's actually really not that expensive either.
Yeah, and I believe the Celeron processor is actually an x86 processor, not an ARM. So yeah, it's gonna work. It's gonna work pretty much out of the box, unless there's some weird hang up in drivers or firmware or something.
Yeah. No, that's really awesome.
That's what I love about it.
Well, here's kind of a counterpoint to that, though. Like, one thing that makes the Raspberry Pi great, and why I haven't really seen, at least I haven't felt like I've seen very many other single board computers take off, is that a lot of stuff is really designed around the Raspberry Pi processor. Like, you can occasionally find builds for other single board computers for stuff, but it's really hit and miss.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the Zimablade here is interesting, because I mean, it does have, if it is that x86 processor like I'm thinking, I mean, it's a lot simpler to work with that stuff. But that's why, you know, despite Raspberry Pi not always being the most powerful, it was just the most ubiquitous for so long. You could always find a build for stuff for it.
This is as an aside, but if I want a powerful computer, I'm not going to buy a single board computer, like just in general. So to me, the compelling thing about the Raspberry Pi computer is the ability to do like physical programming, you know, specific projects, learning, doing experiments with things, you know, incorporating sensors or just making the computer do fun things. That's what makes it, to me, that's what makes the Raspberry Pi interesting. You know what I'm saying? So for like a small form factor computer, this Zimaboard, this thing looks pretty awesome. And like for a small computer that I would need, you know, for any number of things, you know, like I'm thinking of like a project that I just did at work for managing it's a warehouse display, so they can see like what trucks are coming in and everything else. The Pi was a perfect computer for that because it doesn't have any power management, anything. If it loses power, it just shuts off. When power is restored to it, it turns back on, and then everything turns back on along with it. So it's a perfect machine for that. You can do that with obviously other computers too, but when you spend, you know, $65 for a computer that does a very simple task, you know, it's a great thing. I don't need any major processing capabilities. This would also fit the bill, And I think this might even fit the bill slightly better because you don't have, you wouldn't have to worry about compatibility with software. So this actually would be great for that. Like doing physical programming, playing around with this wouldn't be quite as good unless you can get a breakout. Actually, you can with USB. You can get a breakout for that. That's not an issue really. But I mean, it's all built. That's all included in the Raspberry Pi. You know what I'm saying? You think I'm crazy?
Raspberry Pi has an ecosystem built around it, and that is something that, like I say, other boards just generally don't have. Which is, I'm looking at some of the Zimablade stuff right now, and it's got some interesting kind of setups, but yeah, it's nothing like nothing quite like the Pi. It's not going to be something that's going to be that hackable from a hardware perspective. It doesn't.
I think it really depends on what your use case is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
I've heard so many people talk about, I have one Raspberry Pi, and I had it sitting in my closet for probably 2 years before I came up with any reasonable use for it, because I don't undertake those types of projects where I need sensors and controllers and sort of all the stuff that Nate was just mentioning. From the makerspace perspective, like I've seen so many cool projects that use Pis, and also in science and just everywhere else where exactly the way you explained it, where there's that single use where you're not expecting a huge amount of computing power, and actually to the contrary, you want something that is fairly lightweight and low power.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the projects that I've seen have been perfect for those devices. I just personally don't have a huge use for them because of the software compatibility in some cases, where it's like, well, I would run this on there maybe, but it's just not quite powerful enough, or it's not compatible. Whereas something like the Zimaboard is something that is, to me, much more compelling because of the compatibility and being more powerful, and having the ports and the ability to expand it and all those sort of things. Like it's almost like a next step, or an adjacent, like a side step, where it's less focused on building out a small project and more focused on maybe being a server, maybe being so I think it's fascinating to see the innovation in general just around low power computing and like what's possible with a small device.
I actually think this would be better for the application that I did than the Pi, or like maybe running Home Assistant on the Zimaboard. That I think that'd be a great use case for it also.
And that price point is pretty compelling.
Yeah, it is. It's very compelling, which is another reason to really like it. So, yeah.
Hey, Nate.
Yes, I'm still here.
I was wondering, as Nick's just mentioned an update on StormOS, do we have time for that tonight?
Sure, yeah, we can do that at the community free pour.
Okay, good.
I'll pencil you in.
There are some things I wanted to touch on about that today.
Sure, we'll make sure we do that at that time.
Okay.
So Ulfnic, what would you use the Zimaboard or Zimablade, whatever you want to call it, whichever version? What would be the application for that as opposed to something else? Like,
yeah, well, what I would personally do with it, it might not be what someone else would, but yeah, go on. Sorry. Okay, yeah.
Well, like for me, I have this for a project which I still haven't finished yet because I'm busy. It's the framework board, which obviously is a lot more expensive than a Zimaboard, but it has a lot more horsepower also, and power management and things like that. So then I wonder, like, what would be a, like this would be a good the Zimablade would be a good candidate for a lot of my goofy computer project ideas. It wouldn't be as much power, but it might be a better price. I don't know. I'm just thinking, like, what would you use it for? What would you say is a perfect, ideal application for it?
There's three things that I can think of right off the top of my head, but the first one would be a remote KVM. I'm not sure how that board-to-board EDP interface works. I haven't looked into it at all, so that's my fault there. But it might be for accepting a screen signal, so you could plug it into a server somewhere and it could accept the display signal into this EDP interface as if it is a monitor, but it's actually reading the input. I might be mistaking what the EDP port can do, so I'm just guessing here, but that might be what it's for. So that'd be pretty cool. PyKVM, I think, is the best you can buy right now as remote KVM, and it does do that. But yeah, that might be one use case. The other one is it would be kind of cool to have a networked AI server. So normally, if you run an AI at home on sort of a casual basis, you got to run it on your desktop, and that means your VM's got to be up, or you got to run it in a Podman container. It's got to be running on your machine. And if you leave, you got to make sure your desktop's on and it's accessible from the internet. Maybe you don't want to do that for security reasons. So it'd be cool from the perspective of having this thing, because it has that PCI Express slot, and I think you only need X1 for the kind of data transfer you need to do AI stuff. So it easily has enough lanes so that this board could just sit on the network and you could access it remotely via, if you're using a UI interface or CLI. That would be nice. So then I could separate the AI stuff away from my desktop. That'd be good. Also,
and you could plug in
the
GPU of your choice right into that too, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It would be perfect. Also mindful that if a lot of models need a lot of RAM, because they like to put the model into RAM first, and then it goes from CPU RAM into the RAM of your GPU. So it means, if you have a model that's going to consume 12 gigabytes of VRAM, you're going to have 12 gigabytes of CPU RAM, which is usually more than SBCs tend to have. So that it can go up to 16, makes it really good, because 12 gigabytes of VRAM is like a magic number if you're doing AI on a personal basis. Beyond that, and this speaks to there's something I really want to do, but it's kind of expensive and it's never the right time. But I really want to build a custom built. I think it's called a lapdog. I don't know what the official name is, or if that name is copyrighted or something. But basically, it's all the parts you need to have a laptop, and it's just waiting for you to plug an SBC into it. So you have yourself a battery pack. And you have your screen, you have conversion HDMI, so you're just plugging in HDMI, and you have your keyboard and your touchpad. It's not really, and you can also buy yoga hinges or whatever hinges you might like, and it's not really that hard to pull off. And I've done a lot of research for the parts I'd like to get, but it's it's timing and it's expensive, and I'm wondering if I'm really going to use it enough to validate, taking the risk to buy all this stuff. So maybe not, but having that would just be so cool, especially because if you're, for example, doing a custom battery pack, there's no reason why the battery pack has to only work with this laptop. It can work as a standalone battery pack that you can plug your phone into or whatever else into. Depending on how you design the laptop, you could even separate it. So now you have a carry around external battery that you can charge things and plug stuff into. Likewise with the monitor, there's no reason that it has to work with your SBC, because you can plug it into your desktop if you're just not using your laptop. Or your quasi laptop or whatever it's supposed to be called. And again, likewise with the keyboard and touchpad, maybe you want to plug that into a server for a hot minute, just so you can have interactivity via keyboard and mouse direct to fix something because the network's down or something. It's just it's such an incredibly versatile way that you could do things. And this is what shows a lot of promise to maybe we get something like this that's decent. because if SBCs keep coming along like this, it's almost going to be silly to buy a laptop because you can get such an amazing SBC, and you could get a laptop that you plug into it that is like unbelievably versatile and can be used with lots of other things, let alone the SBC that you bought for it. So anyway, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I get it. So that in a way would compete then. That idea basically competes then with like the framework idea of a machine then, because that board,
yeah,
in a
it's
way
the next
is an
level.
SBC.
It's the hypothetical next step, I think, beyond framework, which is you have a laptop where each individual component is truly its own separate entity, which can be used on the fly in any way that you would normally use that kind of device. You could just plug it into anything, or you can plug it all together and it makes a compelling laptop. So I think that's
or the idea of like a cyber deck.
The next evolution. Dude, cyber deck. Yeah, well, I guess listening to this episode, I probably shouldn't source the community for names, but I'd have to come up with something if I'm maybe one day. If I'm dreaming big, I would sell these things in a store and it would be amazing. But yeah, it's just one of those dreams.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah,
So I like that idea. Like the modularity idea, I think is great because it basically it frees your, you know what? And this is just, I got some like really old laptops sitting in bins. It might be cool, and the old ones are kind of thicker, you know. But if you were to take a board like the Zimaboard and then refurbish an old laptop, or like gut the old laptop and be able to connect, things to it. Essentially, you have
There's no reason you couldn't have conversion kits.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Yeah. I mean, so I like the look of some of the old machines just because they're, I don't know, is it a nostalgic thing? I mean, they look old, but that'd be kind of fun to have those like, 1.5-inch thick laptop that era, like the old ThinkBooks or whatever, and then be able to use it like a modern computer. I think that'd be the cat's pajamas right there.
Yeah, and with that much space, if you replace it with a modern LiPo, you'd have a lot of battery power. So that'd be good too.
Oh, Steve's very own trolling. Hello, you amazing Windows users. Oops, wrong stream. I use Windows. Begrudgingly, but I use it. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool, that Zimaboard. And I think it's awesome, the Pi 5 coming out. I don't have a use for one right now. I've got some Pi 4. I got a Pi 4 that's sitting idle at this point. But I will have I guarantee that I will be doing something with a Pi again. So.
Well, actually, Esnix was asking in chat if there's a keyboard enclosure that exists for the Zimaboard that would make a computer and a keyboard that would connect to an external monitor. Is there a keyboard?
I haven't seen anything.
Yeah. They have kits.
I don't believe so.
Yeah, they have kits. So basically, they have a dual core and a quad core model, and then different kits for the quad core model. But there's nothing, and it comes with that enclosure that you see, the case and the board inside of it, and then the kits have different cables and stuff like that.
Wasn't there an episode? I'm thinking there was an episode where, might have been after the show, but somebody brought up a laptop like it's not really like I'm describing, but it works over entirely USB-C. So hypothetically, you could plug it into your phone, and then you have yourself a laptop or a laptop. I don't know what the official name is, but you could use that with the Zimablade because it does have a USB-C port. Perhaps, I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, the next laptop.
And it comes with a Casa OS, Debian based. Never heard of that one before. Casa.
It looks like it's like it specializes on containers.
Oh yeah, okay. Oh, it's got 50 Docker apps. Okay.
It was something that somebody brought up here. I wonder who it was. The lap doc. Who brought that up? Doesn't matter. Anyway. All right. Well, very cool. Well, I'm sure a lot of people here, they like to buy their hardware online, except for maybe Colin, who says he likes to go to a store and feel it and touch it and play with it first. But for those of us that don't have the luxury of living in such a well-stocked area, I live in a rural area, so there's nothing cool like that around here. I have to use Amazon. And there's an antitrust lawsuit that is facing Amazon from the Federal Trade Commission. So has anybody read this article from Reuters? I'm sure there's other articles out there. But in a nutshell,
I was having a quick read.
We have a quick read. In a nutshell, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission's lawsuit is accusing Amazon of abusing the retail market power to stifle competition, and so it faces, this in court. So now it is incumbent upon the FTC to prove the case because Amazon is innocent until proven guilty. That's the way our system works. So it's going to be, quite a I think a high bar to prove that because I feel like there is competition out there. There is Walmart and now you have I think Public Square is another one that's chopping away at Amazon as well. So what do you think of this lawsuit against Amazon? Do you think they have unfair trade practices that's causing this? I mean, they just have a great infrastructure that's set up, warehouses everywhere and so forth. Turning old malls into warehouses may not be a bad thing. I don't know. Or the Detroit Silverdome. Pontiac Silverdome. That's now, I think, an Amazon warehouse. But anyway, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think Amazon is becoming too ubiquitous? Are they too big for their britches, as it were? Is Mr. Bezos chopping away at small town America too much?
I think it's probably. I mean, of course, there are going to be people that agree with this and people who don't. I don't know that the modern world of the internet necessarily can be fair and balanced in a lot of ways, because in order to the expenditures needed to be anything close to something like Amazon are so monumental that who could possibly compete? And is that necessarily Amazon's fault that because they've grown this business? It's not like they just threw it together and I think really and this is what I was telling you, I think it's more to me about, are they engaged in truly anti-competitive practices? Are they doing things that are stifling competition? Is it a strategy of theirs to be anti-competitive by nature? There's nothing wrong with being competitive, with having an open market, and that's sort of the I guess the premise of all of it, right? Is that anybody can compete, but if the one big guy is able to basically stomp out competition, then
one of the things that I know that they have done, and I don't have any documentation to back this up. Maybe somebody out there will source it. Maybe someone can fact check me and tell me I'm wrong, but I've been told that, or I read or somewhere I came with this information, but that basically what they use their algorithms to know what's very popular, and then what they'll do is they'll actually then create an Amazon Basics branded something to compete against that, so they can increase their share. That I've read they've done before, or came upon that information. I don't know if it was in a YouTube video or something. Somewhere I absorbed that information. Now, I'm not a retailer of anything, so it doesn't matter. But they don't go after everything, but just like common items that they'll do that. I mean, but is that any different than what Walmart does or Costco? They create a house brand of something. It seems very similar. I don't know if that's is necessarily true, but it's definitely something. So I don't know. It sounds predatory, but I guess we'll see. What you say, Jinder?
Yeah, but what supermarket hasn't had their name brand on pretty much most common items anyway?
Kroger.
Yeah, I mean, right.
Publix.
Any supermarket you go to, you can go buy a whole bunch of products with that supermarket's name on it. I don't think what Amazon's doing is anything different than anyone else has done in the past, except for that it's at a massively large scale. Besides Walmart, what's that other one that everybody goes to? Temu, Walmart, and
Costco.
Costco, BJ's,
Sam's
I think
Club.
is a big, Sam's Club. Yeah, those ones are the big ones on the market right now.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't think they're a monopoly yet, and that's the only thing you have to really worry about.
I think maybe where there might be some credence in that is, with the whole fiasco of 2020, basically it killed a lot of small businesses, but yeah, Amazon and such, they grew immensely. So it was just a incredible transfer of
It's like
wealth
they got
from
force fed almost.
Yeah, it's incredible transfer of wealth from small business to large business that was done during those couple of years of just sheer nonsense. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that could be, but like that wouldn't just be Amazon. That'd be every large company that was considered essential.
It's the whole dynamic of the global economy, really. One of the stories that has really stuck with me the most this year was listening to someone who was making clothing completely sourced from the United States, from the point of like literally growing the cotton all the way through the manufacture of the clothing. And, and he said just a very short time ago, 40 years ago or less, you had a 95% market share of US based businesses and products, so that there was so much space in the market available for these different companies that there were big companies, small companies, like there was just enough room to have the diversity. And that has been completely flipped on its head, where 95% of textiles and clothing come from outside of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And there's such a small amount left in this country because it's so difficult to do business. And I know that's only tangentially related, but it's the marketplace that's available. And I think that's really what the FTC, if you read the article, that's what they're kind of talking about, is that they say that Amazon is unfairly given preference to its own products, and that the company's policies punish merchants that want to sell products for lower prices on other platforms. And that is like literally the one line thing. And everybody agrees that the FTC has a really high bar and a tall hill to climb to prove this. And like I was saying to you earlier, I think really what I'm curious to see is they've been waiting a long time, supposedly, to bring this suit. And what is it that's either changed, or what is it that's given them the confidence to actually go ahead and do it? And what is the evidence that they have to substantiate this, to support this? Like store brand stuff, like we've all said, and I agree, every grocery store has always had co-packed, sort of store brand items that in many cases appear to be literally the same exact thing as the other brand, the commercial brand, but and they tend to sell it for less, which is kind of exactly what Amazon does. So I agree that on the surface it seems flimsy and that like unjustified, but I have a sense that there's probably something here that's a little deeper than we're able to discern from a Reuters article. So
I think Esnix makes a good point. He says there's a big difference when walking down aisles and browsing products that contain store brands and Amazon search engine pushing Amazon Basics items above competitors, and that's probably a good point there. I think he hits the nail right on the head on that one. But I mean, like, outside of Amazon having more competition, other retailers or whatever out there that can, like Public Square or Walmart, I suppose, that are an aggregate of a bunch of other companies. Like Amazon initially was, well, they just did books, but then they opened it up where, it's kind of like eBay. eBay is a great marketplace. eBay doesn't sell their own anything. They are just a broker essentially for cutting deals between, seller and buyee, seller and buyer. So there's that, that is a good, a broker is great. So I think Amazon was kind of that way a little bit, and then they started chomping into the business of others. So I don't know, but I mean that does fund their little Amazon Prime trucks that run around everywhere. There's a whole truckload more to Amazon or something like that. What's the a whole lot more to Amazon, a truckload more. I think that's on the side of the trucks when I see them go down. But anyway, I don't know. I mean, it's their business. I mean, shop someplace else, I guess. That's what I do.
As we were talking earlier, I mean, it's becoming potentially more and more difficult. I mean, they're really, and there's some specialty stores, but in a lot of cases, like if you want something, where else can you go? You know, Walmart.com, I guess, has a lot of products, but not necessarily. I don't know. I used to shop on Newegg a lot for tech products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I still do.
I do on occasion, but I just find that their platform is more difficult for me to figure out like exactly. I love their search and I like being able to find specific things, but I've just I don't know, I've had a hard time. They used to be, I felt like more curated, and Amazon is guilty of this as well. I just feel like there's so much stuff on there that is junky. It's just like I've never heard of this brand. I don't know if I can trust it or not. You know, everything I see on Amazon and increasingly Newegg and other platforms as well, it just looks like no name. I have a really hard time trying to figure out like what am I looking at? Are the reviews real? So that there is a definite lack of faith on my part that I can find what I'm looking for and actually, get a decent product.
That's fair.
That probably speaks more to that goes well beyond Amazon, I guess. But
yep. Well,
it's a really tough problem.
Yeah, it is.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, it's a deep thing that I think has to be a cultural movement if there's going to be a change, because it requires so much effort in order to pull off. If you're going to start from the bottom and build a company that makes everything from scratch in America, it's not going to be easy for you to do. So you would need a lot of people willing to really fight, and then you'd need a lot of people who were looking for people who were fighting and feeding them. They say which which wolf survives, the one you feed, I guess. So if all your money is going to these no-name items on Amazon that come from places that may or may not have a fantastic human rights record, it's not ultimately going to lead to, say, the kind of world that you want to promote, at least. So
right.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I think it's got to be in the culture first. You win the culture first, and then I think the rest will come.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a real hard thing. It's a hard sell for people, especially when, inflation's out of control and people are having a hard time. I don't want to get into that whole thing right now, because I'm doing Linux Saloon to get away from a lot of that stuff. But
hey, well, I'll tell you a positive. Tell you a positive.
Tell me positive. I like positives.
So Origin Main, I posted in chat. That's what you were talking about, Eric. They make everything in the United States. From the ground up, like literally the plant is grown in the United States which is then woven, which is then sewn, which is then cut into clothes and so on. The whole process is US. I am wearing sweatpants right now that were made in the United States. I think I've had them 3 years now, and I've, like, for, I don't know, 2 decades, a very long time, I've always worn Nike sweatpants. That was my thing. And they tend to disintegrate in about a year. I don't know what other people's experience is, but they disintegrate. These sweatpants, they do occasionally get holes because, I'm doing stuff with them, I'm working, but they don't disintegrate. And the holes are incredibly easy to manage. And I learned to sew on these sweatpants because they're the first pair of clothes that I've had that can actually survive to the point where sewing makes sense. Yeah. So I've learned to sew because these sweatpants are awesome. And yeah, they cost more, but I haven't had to buy sweatpants for 3 years, and they're still going. Like, they're good to go probably for the next 2 years. So the amount of money I've saved, and it was kind of cool to just learn a new skill. Now I know how to sew. It's just like a really positive thing. So There's some light for you, Cubicle Knight.
There's a light, and actually I have not done so recently, but I used to darn my socks, when they started to get like, holes in them. I don't know if you ever darned socks or anything like that. It's a very time consuming process, and I've actually fixed some comforters, like kid comforters, by hand sewing them. And I'll do like, maybe I'll put on some YouTube and then I'll do some sewing. Yeah, but I do quite a bit of sewing. Not in the last couple months, but like this year I've done quite a bit of sewing. I've fixed numerous things because I don't want to spend the money for another comforter. I suppose I could put like a duvet, put inside like one of those like duvet cover things if I really felt like it, or I can just.
It's a good sign too, because if you're sewing something, it meant that what it was made of is worth sewing. If you could think of it that way too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because if it just disintegrates, like there's no point in sewing it because the whole thing is destroyed anyway.
Right.
But yeah, it's good.
It is good.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel the same way. I could go off on a rant about, I almost can remember when the world shifted from value to just commodity. Their products were built to last and had a certain, like, you could hold it in your hand and you can literally feel the quality, to accepting inferior products simply because they were cheaper.
Well, think about
I think that's.
Sorry, finish your thought.
No, I was just gonna say I think has become the expectation, is that people realize they're getting junk, but they're okay with that because it's cheap junk. And I just, I wish, and that's what's so frustrating, is if I want a cable, like I go on to Amazon, because where else am I going to go? And I have to pick from a list of 30 different vendors that I've never heard of, because they're all just made up names. And look at the product, try to judge what the materials are. Is it going to be something that lasts for longer? I can't even tell you how many dozens of cables I've gone through, like charging cables and stuff like that, because sure, they have a nice woven coating on the outside, but the soldering's terrible, or the connector's loose, or I mean, it's all garbage, and you can't trust the reviews because they're all just sort of made up. And so it's just, and even if you try to find ones that aren't junk, they really just don't even exist anymore, because people don't make things that are more expensive because people won't buy them, I guess. I don't know.
It's funny you say that, because when I worked in the appliance business, the question came up: why don't we build these things to last? Because the average lifespan of like a refrigerator is like 17 years or something like that. And the company I was working for was building them for a 12-year lifespan, because according to the research they've done, after 12 years, people tend to rip the appliances out of their kitchen, redo their kitchens and whatnot. And I thought that was I just thought that was terrible. So they built them around the 12-year mark, because that's as long as they expect people to keep them. And I said, well, and actually the study that they had, and again, these studies could all be flawed, I don't know, is that if they put in the added expense so they lasted longer than that, nobody would pay for that additional expense. So you because then they have the competition coming from overseas, where they're building it to that spec as well. And so someone says, oh, I can buy this one here made in the USA for, let's just say $1,000, or I can buy the one made in Korea for $900. Which am I going to go with? And they look similar. But I like the lights better on the Korean one, so let's go with that one, even if it doesn't perform as well.
RGB.
Which, yes, exactly, right? Even if it doesn't perform as well, which we actually could prove they didn't. The air circulation was not as good, but without telling the story or whatnot, they just instead would build to a lower price point, because then to be competitive. So I think a lot of it's a lack of good storytelling is part of the problem there as well. People buy Mercedes not because it's cheaper, or maybe they do. I don't know. In Europe, that might be
well,
that might
in
not
the
work.
long run. In the long run, your Mercedes may be cheaper, because when you go trade it in,
right,
you actually less probably than you would buying some crappy car.
Right. And Anna Rita, I lost where it says, but somewhere she says about like they don't make electronics as good as they used to. And I was just thinking, I was watching this Adrian's Digital Basement. I don't know if you've seen that, but he fixes electronics, like old computers and whatnot. But he'll work on these like old 286, old early XT, I think XT or AT machines, and like they're incredibly heavy. Like they're built to like take to war, basically. I mean, they're just built really stout, and it's kind of a waste, really, when you think about it, because all that metal they put into it, and then you keep them for 10 years, and you chuck them, I guess. I suppose cases now are better because the AT standard has gone on for years and years and years. But anyway, I was just thinking about that one when I saw that from Anna. Yeah, and she also says they make them cheap on purpose so they can sell more products. Yeah, it's true. But I don't know if that's sustainable long term. I mean, like I won't buy a cheap product because I don't want the responsibility of having to properly dispose of it when it breaks. I guess is really what it boils down to for me. I feel like there's an ecological responsibility that I have to have. If I'm gonna, I love technology, but I'm not gonna buy garbage things. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
You could take everybody's garbage cans away and see what happens.
Go back to a time when you had to like take care of your own garbage. Yeah, take away that convenience. That'd be a real awful thing to do, but it's not a bad idea.
Well, and again, I think that's why companies like Framework giving us an option where we don't have to throw away technology at a certain point if we have a different need and need a different configuration, or there's a newer version of a motherboard or a processor, or whatever. And I don't think anyone's going to have a Framework laptop for like 20 years, but at the same time, I think if over the lifespan of that piece of hardware, they make it easy to replace and upgrade, that in the long run, that makes a huge difference on e-waste and all that type of stuff. Especially because if you upgrade your motherboard, you can sell it because it has use. It has value.
Right.
And someone else can use it for something else. Or like you said, Nate, they have a external enclosure or something where you can actually just use the board without the laptop.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
And I kind of wonder though, is the rate of change with computers as great today as it was, I don't know, 10 years ago, you think? I don't know.
Well, and that's just it.
With SPCs, yeah.
I don't have a problem with, the idea of things being available because they're less expensive and allowing more people to have more goods. I mean, I think if they just would not go down so low on quality, if on the scale of 1 to 10 of quality, they're sort of down at a 2. If they would keep it around a 4, it would be acceptable. Yeah, it might still be flimsier than it might otherwise be, but you would still get some use out of it, and it would, I think there would be a better balance between cost of acquiring it, the length of time you could use it, and I just feel like they've pushed down the standard so low at this point, both in terms of what you get and what you expect, that it's almost like a dangerous thing. And I've said this to my wife many times, where I'll buy something for $10 off Amazon, and it has a battery, some sort of, a mother or a board in it, a chip, all of these sort of technologies. And I think, how is it possible to manufacture this piece of equipment and send it to me halfway around the world for $10? Like, it doesn't even seem economically feasible to do that.
Well, when it's a big, giant container filled with these things, they just pump them out.
Yeah.
Isn't it what people want, though? I mean, if nobody bought it, the quality would be higher, right? I mean, I think that's ultimately the problem.
Right. It's because I think price is the absolute motivator, bar none.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, like, this is the world that the average person would like to have, even if we don't particularly like it.
Yeah.
Because that it's evident through their purchasing habits that it continued to repeat That's
younger
awesome.
people don't know any different, right? I mean, if the only world they've ever lived in is this level of quality outside of either an antique or vintage or something like that, then I don't think they know to expect anymore. So I think over time, and it's not like rose tinted glasses where I'm like remembering where everything was so amazing. Like I remember really janky, kind of terrible experiences with electronics and home goods and things like
Those are
that.
still good times, to be fair.
No, they were
Like blowing in your cartridge to get it to work. Yeah, that was good.
I mean, think of a car from years past. If you drove a car, you could expect a belt to go at any time, a hose to go at any
It's true.
time. You
That's
could be
part of
on
the
the
fun.
side of a road, a tire.
Fun?
Yeah,
I'm being too positive.
I mean,
it's just part of the, it's excitement. It's part of the journey. I remember like some of the most fun journeys were made more fun because we broke down and I had to, figure something out. Like I was going down to LA once on, and my it was the power steering went out and it started making all sorts of noises. So I I rolled into Denny's and they happened to have some tools in the manager office. So, I had like a socket wrench and I managed to remove the belt that went around the power steering. And then I finished up the trip with just no power steering, which, of course, is very hard to move the wheel. But,
if you're moving, it's okay.
no,
It's when you're trying to park.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But, yeah, it was just, I don't know, it's part of the fun. You meet people and maybe it's not always that fun, let's face it. But, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I remember having
It adds flavor to life, I guess.
It's true.
it did, and if you have that perspective on it, if it wasn't pouring down rain or freezing or some horrible weather condition.
Well, this is in California, so maybe it's easier to do it there.
Yeah. But I remember having every car I had when I was young, I had a big trunk full of stuff where it was like jumper cables and an extra belt and a whole tool kit and having to use them
people
pretty
needed
regularly.
a jump, and you're like, "Hey, man, I got cables. Don't worry about it."
Yep.
Yeah, that's good.
So Don Lecton brings up a good point. He says at you, Eric. He says, "But anybody could repair an old car. There's too much software now." But now just think, if let's say car software was built on open source technology, where you could access and see everything you need to see, and everything and things actually reported honestly, a car today with the sensors and technology and open technology, the open technology that exists today, would actually be an easier car to work on in theory than cars in the past, because like you don't know what is failing necessarily unless you have the experience working on a car, of what the failure would be. But with the software that's in cars now, they know what's failing. They know it's failing before it's failing, but you just got to have the right key to be able to unlock that information, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, until the car gets out of control and you put one little word wrong and the car's out of control for some reason.
Yeah, system
that's
CTL,
a possibility.
System CTL restart car. Yeah, I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
Oh, what was that I was reading? Like Tesla is doing some really cool things. Like they're eliminating the CAN bus, and they're doing something with like using like standard network components, like network like computer network infrastructure inside them instead. And by doing this, actually saving weight like on copper for the wiring and things like that. It's actually really neat what they're doing. I watched a video on that a while ago. I thought it was really neat how they're doing that, making a more efficient by not only reducing the amount of materials to make it, but also using more common components from the, computer architecture stuff, which I guess in theory would make it easier to add modules and replace modules in theory. If they didn't
saving copper, what is it, all Bluetooth?
There's some wireless stuff in there too, yeah.
Oh man, oh no! I was saying that as like a bad joke, but if that's real,
well, like there's
I don't
some.
want my brake lights talking Wi-Fi. Like,
no, there's some. Sure, yeah, but there's something that I think that was wireless because some things rotate and whatnot. That you can actually put a wireless
Yeah.
connection between it so that it can do. There's some really neat things anyway. I mean, there's wireless communication for your tires already, but there was some other things that I'm probably misremembering, so don't quote me on that. Welcome back, Sean. And so don't quote me on that bit, but it was something I thought was very interesting.
The CAN bus is something else. I'm not some kind of expert that knows all about it, but as far as I understand it, like anything can kind of just pretend to be anything. It just says that it is that thing, and then it is that thing. So it can say it's your brake pedal. It can just say it's your airbag, and then it can communicate with the car's computer as if it is that thing.
Mm-hmm.
So your brake lights can tell your car's computer that you've slammed on the brakes or something like that. Like, it's just nuts. And in some cases they integrate it with things that potentially can be accessible from outside,
Right.
which like over wireless technologies, or from whatever third-party service they might be using for car management, like the kind of thing where you call them up and they'll open your door for you because you locked your keys inside or something. But yeah, it's scary stuff, that CAN bus. I don't know if they're making something better with Tesla, but that'd be nice.
I think it's just standard networking protocols, Ethernet essentially. So Anna
It'd be nice if the brake lights couldn't pretend to be the brake pedal. I guess I could just say that much.
If they're interconnected or whatever. Yeah, I can see that. I have it's a 2021 hybrid minivan. And in the wintertime, it's basically kind of impossible to drive here because it has sensors on the front. And so if you're going into a drift, it applies the brake because it thinks you're slamming into something. So it's very difficult to manage this vehicle in the wintertime. And I wish there was a way you could shut that off, because, can you imagine, like, Jinda, you've probably driven in the like drifts that are like, 6 foot tall of like just puffy white. Yeah. So
I've driven through so much snow, I had to get out and brush the hood off because I couldn't see anymore.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I remember like driving. I had a '91 Chevy Caprice Classic. I drove that for a while when I was a teenager, and I was driving to work. I had a fast food job. And I was driving. I had driving 10 minutes to get to work, and I remember like hitting these snow drifts because I lived by the lake that were like 3-4 feet tall, but they're just like a short little, whatever, and slamming through those things. It was tons of fun. Retrospect is probably very dangerous and foolish, but I can't do that in my van because it's gonna like go brake, and beep at you, and then it's gonna apply the brake safely. I'm like, but how are you supposed to get to work if there are drifts? I don't know.
Yeah, my buddy had an Audi, and this is going back years ago. That's what it would do. It would decide the traction control system knew better than you did, and it would turn it on. The car would stop in the snow. So eventually, he just had a switch on the dashboard to pull the fuse. He clicked the fuse out, or the fuse wouldn't work for that period of time, and then we click it back on. When he got in the car, he wouldn't have any errors running, lights blinking.
I know. I kind of appreciate the integration, and I kind of dislike it all at the same time.
It has its place.
I think overall, for the average person, all of the modern stuff, for as big of a hassle as it can be, and I agree. I used to work on my own car. I used to do a lot of the basic maintenance, but you can't deny the reliability is pretty unbelievable for most vehicles. And yeah, there can be any number of problems. The greater the complexity, the more likely, or more, the greater the possibility of something going wrong. And there have been lots of stories of, catastrophic failures of systems and things like that. But, of the millions of cars on the road, it's a very small percentage. And we've gotten to a point where most people don't even understand how cars work anymore because they literally never have to look at anything. They get in, drive it, put gas in it, and put air in the tires, maybe, and that's it.
It's true. I mean, old cars, they would actually tell you how to adjust the timing on the heads.
You'd get
a manual. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Like
and now
real manual.
And now in the manuals, they tell you not to lick the batteries. So I'm not sure exactly, what's changed.
Yeah, right. It's better if you just don't open the hood.
Yeah. I don't know. That's kind
Just
of tragic.
So I think it's a trade-off, right? On one hand, for the people who were handy enough or interested in doing maintenance themselves, it is a loss because cars now, you open the hood and it's like, I don't know what's happening in here. But on the other hand, for the majority of people who really don't have an interest in doing that kind of stuff, it's kind of amazing how such a complicated piece of machinery, because cars are really an expression of just about all of our technologies.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
It's nuts.
for it to be such a generally reliable piece of equipment is really a pretty impressive thing. So
yeah, nuts.
And a lot of them do run Linux.
It's true. The infotainment system in my van runs Linux because I've seen it crash numerous times.
And that's not Linux's fault.
Of course not. Of course not. So there's some
I remember
very
being on.
What?
Oops,
Sorry. No, finish that thought.
I was just gonna say really quickly. I remember being on one of my first flights where they had the infotainment system.
Yep.
And seeing a Tux Penguin.
Yep.
And I was like, what is going on? Because they had to reboot it or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, no,
I'm
planes
like looking
don't.
around going, I was all excited and no one else cared.
No, nobody cared. It's now planes don't even have infotainment systems. You just use the Wi-Fi and you just access it from your phone or tablet, whatever. Because everybody
You don't
has.
want to use that really creepy looking phone that's like sticking out of the headset.
They don't have that anymore either. Those are all gone.
No, I know. I'm just.
It's like
I'm
it's
saying
actually
when they did exist.
It's actually a spot. You just you flip it down on the back of the head. You just put your phone on there, or I guess your tablet. I suppose you could sort of do. I don't know. Anyway, and then you can browse movies there and watch whatever you want. It's kind of sad because we all can't be forced to watch the same thing anymore. You know, back when that was a thing. Oh well.
Shared experience.
So some very exciting news. Stop the presses. Hold the phone. Steve's very own turned 67 yesterday on September 29th.
That can't be possible.
Steve's very own. I can't believe he's 67.
No, it's not possible.
Yeah, that seems a little bit crazy. He looks too youthful for that, don't you think?
He does. Happy birthday, Steve.
Yep. Happy birthday, bye.
That means so yesterday in 1956, there was a woman in excruciating pain, and then she was in pain the rest of her life. Well, all right. It is that time to kind of talk about next week. So next week will be our application Appetizer normally, but this is we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So if you remember from last week, Ulfnic decided to work out a system for doing like an AI, a machine that you can play with AI on. So it's an open source
text to work.
Yep thing. So go ahead and talk about it a little bit.
So last week there's a community named CyperTopia.xyz. And it hosts various open source services that people can try for free. Mr. Newbie was a creator, and he's helped me a bit with the server. And there's a person in that community named Maharif who loaned me a GPU rig to put AI services on for everybody to enjoy. So I've been working on that. Last week, what I was showing people was I had a link and you could go there and check out Stable Diffusion. I did leave that up working. I think I gave one authentication. I think it was, login and password. I did leave it up until Friday. However, not so many people hopped on. And I think it's because you'd have to get on, like the instruction was you have to get on Telegram, and then you'd have to at me to get an authentication code, and maybe that's a bit much for people. So what I'm working on now, I took down the server on Friday because people weren't really using it anyway, at least from the Linux Saloon side. And now originally I was just running it in a Python environment. And systemd was just keeping it up, and it was just one instance, and it was attached to two GPUs. So it had the RAM of both and the CPU of one, and it was super duper jank, and the auth was terrible. And basically, if I wanted to revoke someone's key, I'd have to reset the server so it would reread the auth because it holds the auth in memory. Like, it's just, I pushed it about as far as a simple solution could go. So what I'm working on now is everything is going to be put into Podman containers. Today I had success with setting up Podman and doing GPU pass through into these containers. So there's, I'm going to be able to distribute it across 8 different GPUs. I'm going to do a front end where people can hop onto this web page and they can. This is not going to be in the first implementation, but they'll be able to select the AI they'd like to play with. So it could be text to chat, it could be audio stuff, it could be Stable Diffusion 1.5 or Stable Diffusion 2.0. Hopefully I will have 2.0 shortly available for people. It's pretty new. It's trained on images that are 4 times larger than 1.5, which is what you've seen demoed on Linux Saloon a few episodes back and people have been playing with. So it is a huge step forward. Different user interface, but it is more simple to use. So there's that. But ultimately, what this is leading to is, instead of this complicated thing where you have to at me on the Telegram to get this auth and whatever, it's just going to be a simple link that you go to, and as soon as you go to it, it's automatically going to generate authentication for you. It'll save it to a cookie. And then you'll be able to use the service as long as you like. And eventually I'll take down the link that allows you to get this sort of freely randomly generated auth for free. But you'll still be able to use the one that you have that's in your cookie. You'll also be able to click a button to get the actual password that is that your cookie is using, so you can use the website on other devices, or you can share it with your friends if you like. So this is it's kind of annoying because it's like I can either do the super hacky solution, which was coming apart at the seams and it didn't, it was a bit too uncomfortable for people to use, or I could just go this full-fledged service where it's like almost turning into something you'd sell. So it's like, so that's kind of where we're going now. We're getting into that that semi-professional category, but it's given me a lot of experience, and it's just a blast to work with, and it's just been a lot of fun. So that's what's happening. I'm not sure how quick I can have that link out, but as soon as it's ready, I'll be posting it everywhere on Telegram and so on. Maybe that's next episode. And then I'll have a link that you guys can just go to and chat, and you're instantly looking at an interface. You just click a button and then it'll boot up a container, and you're looking at AI without having to mess with authentication.
Cool. So I think we could probably pin it in the Telegram. We could probably pin it in the Telegram. Yeah. As soon as it comes available, like when you have it set, and then people can be off to the races on it. And if we have any questions, we can like hit you up in the Telegram then. Is that what you would like, or Discord or
Yeah, absolutely. I've noticed something interesting, that if I offer help like with FRP or something like that, no one actually takes me up on it usually. There might be 1 or 2 people, but I think what people want is just a really easy way to just check it out and not have to jump through any hoops. So what I'm aiming at is just eliminate all hoops. It's like, there you go, there's AI, go play, and that's all you got to do. But yes, hypothetically, if you would like to get into self-hosting, if you want to do something with Podman or containers or FRP or whatever it is that I might be able to help you with, I take notes with everything that I do, and I'm happy to share the notes with you, and maybe help you through whatever you're stuck with. So
that sounds great.
Yeah, that is
exciting.
That is the Telegram.
Yeah, I love the idea that I can try that excuse me, it's multifaceted, and I could try different types of AI, because I've done text, and I haven't done anything with audio. So if I had the ability to do something with audio, I think that would be cool.
Yeah, I was talking with somebody today about, there is a fork of the it's a text web UI. I forget the exact name, but it's Udabuga is the creator of it, and there's a fork of it which has this really cool implementation that it gives the AI a much better memory over the course of a full discussion. But the guy recently, he doesn't have time for it, and Python versions change. He has to keep updating it, and he's canceled that project. So if you want to use that, you have to like have that be a separate thing, and that's why I kind of like VMs, because you can save your state and then you can go create a new one. So just with like this, almost like the cowboy town that AI is right now, and projects coming and going, and you need X version to run Y extension, and like all this mix and nuance. To some degree, you kind of need to be able to containerize things or VM things, so you can get the full range of the experience, because projects come and go, and they can be very pernickety with versions. So yeah, that's the sad state at the moment.
Yeah, I've gotten burned by updates, and it does make me realize that I probably want to make a snapshot of something before I update anymore, because it changes enough, and there are so many dependencies that also changing so quickly that, and I like how you put it, like it is definitely sort of a cowboy Wild West sort of mentality right now. Everything just moves so fast.
Yeah,
Cool.
and it doesn't like OpenAI. Um, the Whisper by OpenAI. They use like this really awkward version of Python, and so you have to like install this special repo in order to get it, and then in order to run something else, you need like increment the like minor version by 2 in order to run something else, and you have like tons of different versions of Python installed. And it's like, my hard drive space, no.
Yeah.
But because
that.
as soon as you get this new version of Python, then you need all the libraries to go with that version, and they're all different, even though they're from the same maker, and it's a right mess.
Well, thanks for providing the ability to test this stuff out, and I'll definitely be taking a look at it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, and a huge thanks again to CyperTopia.xyz, Mr. Newbie, who is an awesome dude, and likewise to Mahari for loaning me the GPU rig. It's just tremendous thanks to them, and they're the people that is allowing this to happen. So yeah, major thanks to them.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to that. And I should have more time this week. Maybe we'll see. All right, for a little housekeeping. If you have any suggestions for discussions, distributions, applications, poll ideas, send them to suggestions at linuxsaloon.com, or you can hit me or Eris or somebody up that you see here on Telegram or Discord, and we can get that into our list of things. Also, the Linux Saloon calendar, I keep it updated. You can check that out as well. I can probably put the whole link in here, I suppose. Anyway, so on any of the upcoming shows, if there's any like drifting left or right on the time, then I will reflect it on the calendar as well. Or if I make a silly mistake and I fat finger 9 p.m. instead of 8 p.m., you can check the calendar, because the calendar is the calendar rules me, but I rule the calendar. So there we go. I was going to do the community free pour with Ben, but he seems to have jumped out. He's going to talk about Storm OS or Linux or both. I don't know, but all right. I guess we can probably just close out a little bit early then today. So I guess we'll move on to last call. Eric, Distro Hoppers Digest. Where in the stage of show releasing are you right now?
So we're going to do something which I guess is, as the new guy, I wasn't aware of, but we're all going to review Linux Mint Debian Edition 6. All three of us are going to do it, and so
cool.
We'll have, I thought that was neat. So one of us will take sort of the nuts and bolts, innards, and updates, what's different between 5 and 6, and that kind of thing. And I'll probably be more the color commentator about what's maybe less deep than that, what's more visible, that sort of thing. So anyway, I just think it'll be interesting to have more of a triple take on a single distro. So yeah, Linux Mint Debian Edition 6, and which is good for me too, because I've looked at it a few times, but and I know that it's always sort of looked at as one of those hedging their bets kind of things, where if something went bad with Ubuntu, they have this version that's based on Debian. But I think there's probably a little more to it than that, and I've just never had the opportunity to dig any deeper, and this is my opportunity. So looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, fantastic. So Steve's very own, he just had his birthday yesterday, and I think he might be doing a stream tomorrow. I don't know. He didn't say no. I didn't see a notification though in my my YouTube, so maybe not. Maybe if he feels like it tomorrow. If I keep stalling and saying something, maybe he'll actually put something in the chat, and then I can say for sure whether or not at 9 a.m. Central tomorrow, Steve will do his stream where he talks about whatever he wants to talk about, which may or may not be Linux. So we'll find out. So Steve's very own, 9 a.m. Central on YouTube. All right. Linux User Space is a fantastic podcast where Dan and Leo talk about all kinds of fun things that they do. They're doing the Common Desktop environment, I think, in their next episode. I think it releases Monday. So check that out. Dan and Leo are a joy to listen to, especially when you have an hour drive to work and you need to listen to a great podcast and not fall asleep. Perfect. Check out Linux User Space. I'm on a podcast called Linux Out Loud, but I missed the last one because I had other engagements. So check out Matt and Wendy, or at least just listen to Wendy and ignore Matt, whichever you'd like to do. I have a website called cubicule8.com. I do things sometimes. Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network. Check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. I want to thank you all for your support, however you do it, being a part of the conversation, both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, as well as everyone for watching the show after the fact. I thank you all. I want to thank everyone involved for making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back in a personal computer. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
I have a little thanks for watching thing. I forgot to put that up there, but it's up there now. Just a little FYI, I'm having stream connection issues. So this one might end up getting like reposted. What can you do?
That's streaming. There's nothing you can do. I think it's part of the endearment of it is that there's just always some sort of potential for calamity.
Yeah. I'm getting
It's okay.
I'm getting between 21 kilobits per second and 1,000, and so I'm recording as well as streaming. So,
Can AI help with that?
no, it can't. But we'll just keep churning on. So yes, Don, the stream is flaking, and I don't know if it's my connection, or if it's YouTube, or my connection to YouTube. I had trouble playing YouTube today, so I don't know what it is. Maybe YouTube's having I don't know, it's having a hard time. I have no idea. I'm gonna see if I can restart the stream, but we can just keep chatting because I'm gonna just re-upload this one.